All right, welcome to another episode of Chasing Rings. I'm your host, Guru, joined again by my pals, Big Dude and G. What's going on today, gentlemen?
What's going on?
Chilling. Today, we're going to get into the discussion of Bill Belichick being snubbed by the NFL Hall of Fame, which I'm still trying to process to this day. This was his first time appearing on the ballot, but there are a lot of bewildered and angry people. I'm among those. But anyway, before we jump into our discussion, let's take a look at his resume because, I've heard people go back and forth and try to chip away, but there's nothing that can be chipped away here. I mean, if you look at the accolades, for those of you who are listening via one of the audio streaming services, 49 consecutive seasons as a coach, whether head coach or an assistant, most Super Bowl wins, most Super Bowl appearances. He's got 8 Super Bowl rings, 6 as a head coach, 2 as a defensive coordinator. For us older heads, will remember when he was with the Giants under Parcells, and he helped architect those Lawrence Taylor defenses that we all remember from the 80s and early 90s. He has the most playoff wins as a head coach with 31 wins, most division titles and conference championships, the most 12-win and 11-win seasons. He's the second most winningest head coach with 333 victories behind Don Shula, who had 347. And we were all convinced that Belichick would pass him had he certainly had another season into it, continued on with another team. And he has the second most playoff games coached with 44, just only one behind Big Red, Andy Reid in Kansas City. So, I mean, just those, and that's just the tip of the iceberg if you really look at his complete resume. But those things obviously jump out at you. And as a first ballot, no matter what your feeling is about Bill Belichick, certainly as a Buffalo fan, being in their division and being dominated for decades by them, dude is the GOAT. There's no way that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Do you think that controversies like Spygate, Deflategate, affect this Hall of Fame case, and are they overstating the impact of those in terms of them winning? Or did you guys think maybe his post-Tom Brady career, where Tom winning got another one in Tampa Bay and Belichick never won again in New England, maybe were the reasons that he was snubbed? Why do you guys think he was snubbed? We can start with you, Big Dude.
I'm pretty sure the self-righteous media members of America, from the committee, you got a bunch of those folks, men and women that are on there. I won't say those guys, but those writers are extremely self-righteous, and they come up with their own way of trying to put metrics together beyond the number of things. This resume that we have here, I don't know if I know another one that's close to it. So I think Spygate and I think Deflategate wasn't the reaction he gave, because he's the type of person, he's not going to give you a big reaction either way, whether it's wins, whether it's losses, or whether he thinks they caught you into something. Now, I could understand a little bit if Bill Belichick, as a result of Spygates and as a result of Deflategates, was never allowed to coach again and was banished from the NFL. I'd understand, and that doesn't mean I think that would necessitate him not being first ballot. It would provide a better argument about perhaps why don't you vote for him. But then looking at 11 of the 50 voters that did not vote for him, if that's the reason, it's so wrong, because if those things that he was supposedly involved in, and I can't remember what all the findings were, let me just explain that it didn't end his career, and he was still able to be involved with NFL Network. He was on the show where they were selecting the best players of all time. see, when you have somebody on there that's making you still look good even after they're out of the NFL and they're involved with a lot of major things that help secure the NFL's future, you're celebrating that person. So when you start to take a look at it as a writer, I think writers have to come up with a different way of how they celebrate people, because there's so many people in the past that didn't do as well that were first ballot. So with this is historical. He is the GOAT. It did not result in him being kicked out of the NFL. I don't believe that he should have been denied first ballot.
And what about you, G? What's your take on why he may have been snubbed this first go around?
All right, walk with me on this one. So, Guru, you put up pretty much what he's done in the playoffs, which is, I mean, that's just GOAT status alone. So I'm gonna just add a few pieces, big picture pieces. So in 29 seasons, now remember, only Tom Landry had 29 seasons, first ballot Hall of Famer, and Chuck Noll 23 seasons, first ballot Hall of Famer. Excuse me. But his win percentage was the third highest out of first ballot Hall of Famers. Super Bowls tied for second, and which you mentioned in the championships. But big picture, looking at his coaching record, he's easily one of the top three in terms of wins.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you add in all the playoff accolades, and that kind of speaks for itself. So what's my thinking here? I really don't know the impact of Spygate and Deflategate. I don't know if it's his poor relationship with the media. He never really liked to give the media a good story or talk, and he can be a curmudgeon at times. Generally speaking, the voters aren't really talking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know anything about the voters, usually they won't come out and discuss, and some of them will never discuss, but won't come out and discuss their reasoning until after the inductees' names are provided. So, and this was just, I was thinking about something that I didn't have in my notes. This wasn't a Pete Rose situation. If you really think about it, Deflategate and Spygate was not at that level in my world, and I think most people would probably agree with that. So we don't really know definitively all the reasons. We know one person said that it was not about Belichick, and this was a Kansas City writer. It was more about some seniors that he felt he wanted to get them in. So reading that, I mean, I don't know all the reasons why. It's going to be interesting once folks start talking to determine what that is. But I don't believe I could definitively blame it on any past poor behavior. I don't think I can blame it on his post-Brady years, because obviously when you go in the Hall of Fame, it's about your entire portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I am. He's definitely the GOAT in the playoffs. He's the GOAT in terms of overall wins. We don't know all the situations behind it, and so I'll reserve my thoughts on that until after the inductees are named, and then people start talking.
Yeah, I think you do a really good breakdown of that. I have been hearing that they were considering some of the senior folks on the ballot in lieu of him. But when you have somebody who is at the top of that coaching list, like he is, I mean, to not have first ballot Hall of Famer next to Hall of Famer seems to diminish his GOAT status, in my opinion. And I think we would all agree that he's the GOAT. I mean, we've seen Landry, we've seen Noel. Like I say, I root for a team that's in the division with them, and it would be easy for me to be happy about him not being elected. But this is just a travesty to me. And, for someone who loves the NFL as much as I do and appreciate the history of it, I think it's a sad day, really, when you think about the Hall of Fame and what it means to the league. You hear people like Jimmy Johnson saying he's not going to attend this upcoming Hall of Fame induction ceremony due to this.
Oh, wow.
And I'm wondering if others will follow. I mean, this is huge. You have one of your greats, and it'd be like if the greatest quarterback ever got snubbed as a first ballot Hall of Famer, the greatest who we consider the GOAT running back, or go by those positions. Could you imagine Lawrence Taylor not being a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about here. I mean, this guy, he was so good that they're talking about, even though it seems like the game may have passed him by as much as it relates to the NFL, people are still calling for him to come coach some of these teams that have vacancies. His name was being floated around. And I don't think it was floated around just because he was a decent or a very good head coach in the league. It was floated around because he was the GOAT.
No doubt. Hey, bro, let me take this a little bit deeper for you. Randy Moss, Junior Seau, they were there doing Spygate. They're both first. I think they were both first ballot Hall of Famers. So what's going to happen with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski?
Those are the questions that are being floated today, especially the Brady question. That will be very interesting. And he was one of the people who, was very opinionated about Belichick, having been elected as a first balloter. He was strongly behind that. And, he's kind of wondering what's going to happen moving forward with people. And I'm sure he's thinking about himself as well. I mean, people consider him the GOAT. I don't necessarily consider Tom Brady the GOAT. Another conversation. But I would not argue him being the GOAT, okay? So let's say Tom Brady's the GOAT quarterback. I think we'll be having the same conversation if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yep.
And I think that the NFL, the Hall of Fame selection committee, set a terrible precedence this week by doing what they just did. Because so that means nobody else, as you said, nobody else associated with those teams during those years then should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I believe, isn't Robert Kraft on this ballot as an owner?
So. I think he is.
So it'll be interesting to see if Robert Kraft gets elected. Then Houston, we know we have a problem.
Hey, bro, here's part of the problem. I think we may get to some of this later, but I'll kind of tease it since it matters right here. There isn't any real criteria other than, and I'll quote them, the Pro Football Hall of Fame itself, I'll quote them, ensure that new enshrinees are the finest the game has produced.
Well, doesn't get any more clear-cut than that in terms of Belichick meeting that criteria, but you're right. That's really vague.
Yeah. Yeah, and as they used to say back in the day, and we all worked together, I don't know if you were part of that regime, G, where people used to say, broadly written to be broadly applied.
Exactly.
That's how we were told to put policy together so people wouldn't ask questions. But I think that's what we have. But then you have a group of people whom aren't even experts. I mean, the writers, they have relationships with people all the way back in the day with Babe Ruth and people talk about Ty Cobb and all those other folks and some of the different things that were happening to those folks, and some of the things that they were doing, spikes up high against players of color and everything else. I mean, we go all the way back to it. There were people that know certain things that could bring anybody else down. And who goes in, like with Randy Moss, all those things that he went through, somebody could have picked 100 things, even back to his youth, about why he couldn't be in there. How far do you go back? But then supposedly all that is washed out when you're all done and when you're finished and when you're allowed to finish and when you're allowed to participate and you become the man you need to become. And maybe Belichick is not going to be the man we all want to emulate. That's pretty much it, But when we start talking about having that success, whatever the secret sauce is, that's some secret sauce I don't know that we will ever hear of again. And that does not.
Funny, man. I'm sorry. I thought you took a deep breath, and I thought you were done.
No, okay. And I did. Go ahead.
Oh, so one of the things is interesting. I don't know if you all ever heard this. There are some naysayers out there who were saying, "Well, Bill Belichick he wouldn't have been that good in New England without Brady or
Yeah.
whomever. So two things. One, what what highly successful coach was successful without high quality players? It's like that's just dumb.
Yeah.
Then the
That's
second
exactly what
thing
Jimmy
is,
Johnson
and
said.
what'd you
That's
say,
exactly what
Guru?
Jimmy Johnson said.
Yeah. And I'm just like, the second thing is, when you have a bunch of high quality players, you do need a CEO type coach who can bring the best out of them, who can actually manage those personalities. I think of oh God, I'm a Laker fan. I think of Phil, what's his name, last name?
Phil
Phil
Jackson.
Jackson.
Huh?
Phil
Phil
Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah. I think of Phil Jackson, and I'm like, if you have to be able to coalesce all of those personalities who probably make more money than you, who have more power than you to influence the general manager and the owners, and you can stay there as long as he did and win the way he did with those strong personalities, with those making more money than him and literally having more power than him in a lot of ways. I'm like, it's just a freaking no brainer that he should be in the Hall of Fame right now. And we'll get to the writers a little later. I have some other thoughts about
And to further drive that home too, G, Tom Brady himself, I won't quote him directly, but the question was posed to him, if you had to pick one coach, or no, they didn't ask him, he volunteered this. If he had to pick one coach to win a Super Bowl, he would pick Belichick. And
that.
to make this an indictment on Brady, I don't want to dog Brady, but if we look at those New England Super Bowls, the only one that Tom Brady really put up gaudy numbers was against the Eagles, and they lost.
Yeah.
So all of those games came down to some coaching decisions and strategy because they won a couple by field goals. They won one in overtime. I mean, they did not blow people away in Super Bowls where, if you remember decades before when we were growing up, all Super Bowls were blowouts. So I'm happy that we entered an era where the games are competitive now. But
Yeah.
there has to be an asterisk put there, not only with it coming from Tom Brady, but if you really look at how those games played out. I mean, didn't they win a Super Bowl 10-7 or 13-7 against the
Yeah.
Rams?
I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think to investigate that,
I
how they
mean,
won.
Right.
That's coaching has to come into play somewhere there.
Right. In the year they could have went 18-0. It didn't happen. So even if you take that away, the whole point is who gets to almost be 18-0. And it just so happens another person that got, shut out with, Eli Manning, he's the person that wins that game to knock Belichick and those guys off. So it's starting to come on out like who's making the plays. But the thing that was great about New England, all these guys, a lot of them weren't known. Their offensive line is almost a no name. I don't know if I could name hardly any of the offensive linemen that were on any of those Super Bowl teams. I know they played. I know they lost a lot. Earlier, they got killed by the Bears. In the 85 season, 86 Super Bowl. But after that, and after they, Adam Vinatieri, whoever knew anything about Adam Vinatieri, they have a kicker that's like one, and he stuck with them. And Belichick also cut people. This is what people don't understand. He cut people that nobody else would have ever cut. One guy, in fact, we look at the weather, in this South Jersey here, and this, you're in Connecticut, Walter, nothing for you, G, but, there was a lot of snow out there. One linebacker had been playing great ball for the last 3 years. He comes late to a practice because of the snow, trying to get through the traffic, and said the wrong thing. And it's not that he wasn't playing good. He said, hey, what'd you do? I got sent home. They said, so do you have anything to reflect on it? Just went home, put the toes in the air. But I ain't really learned nothing. Cut. And it's a guy they needed. So I think Belichick also wasn't afraid to just also make examples out of folks. Everybody couldn't come play for New England, even some of the best players. They had to fit in the system. Randy Moss had to go back there and march like a soldier. That's what Randy Moss did. He didn't come there, and they did not cater to him at all. Randy Moss had to go into the system, You know,
Mm-hmm.
then you got players that may not ever be Hall of Famers like Julian Edelman. You know, Julian Edelman made a difference in almost all those Super Bowls he played in to either keep him in there or to help him win it. Like I said, so it's not all of the best players. I mean, Brady is one person, but everybody else has got to fit in a system. He showed that a system and a philosophy, it works. And parts are interchangeable. You need talent, but you need people to do exactly what you have to do in order to get the result that you're going to need to get.
And for the number of years that he maintained that, I mean, we see what happens from year to year in this league, and no one in our time, I mean, even those great Steelers dynasties, those great Cowboys teams, we can go back even further, the Dolphins, those teams did not maintain that winning for as long as New England has. San Francisco, no one wins that many years in a row. I mean, it transcended decades.
Yeah. And if the Bills would ever pull out a Super Bowl, you could probably have included them in that.
Exactly. And that transcends culture, like you said, big dude. And, you know, not necessarily bringing in the big name players. They didn't have a superstar wide receiver until they got Randy Moss. And that was way towards the end of everything they accomplished. So,
you know, it's really interesting. I'm looking at this, and Tom Brady, I think he probably got a lot of yards after catch, because I'm looking at Rob Gronkowski and Wes Welker, and I'm reflecting back, and I'm like, he threw a lot of short passes.
Yeah.
And then until Randy Moss got there. And I think that he had to throw a lot of those short passes, big dude, is because their offensive line. I'm looking at their list here of like people who in the New England Hall of Fame or the Patriots Hall of Fame, so on and so forth. And I do see some defensive line folk, but I'm not saying offensive. One, a guard, Logan Mankins. But anyway, my point is
oh, it was very good.
Yeah, my point is that, you know what? Brady got a lot of yak in his resume. I mean, he had those two, Julian Edelman too, who was catching those short passes and then running for 7, 8, 10 yards or more. So is he really the GOAT? So that's going to be a whole nother story, a whole nother question, I think.
And I'll give a little bit of a disclaimer because I don't want to take away from Brady. Certainly this episode is not about him, but I also don't want to take away from him. The situations, right? And if we looked at what Josh Allen did in a situation, a quarterbacks like Josh Allen versus what Brady did in those situations, none of us can probably ever remember where Brady did not come through in a clutch situation. Yeah. So I think that's probably one of those variables that I would think that makes the argument for Brady. And again, we're not trying to diminish with the yak, but but something that you both mentioned brings me back to the episode when we were talking about, and Big Dude, you brought up this comparison, building a program in college football. This is our college football discussion, building a program or a team. Belichick built a program.
Yes, he did.
The Patriot way. How many teams have a name for whatever the culture was that they established?
Right.
That everybody knew, every free agent knew, every draftee knew that you went to New England and things had to be done a certain way, the Patriot way. And if you couldn't conform to that, like you said, Big Dude, didn't matter who you were cut.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the other thing about him. If you think about his time there, I don't think he was successful when he left, but think about his time there. Oftentimes, I'm thinking back, they played to the strengths of the players that they had.
Yes.
I don't think Bill Belichick had I'm an offensive, I'm a defensive. I really believe, y'all tell me if I'm wrong, let me see who I have. How do we create a plan that actually works to their strengths and then improve on where they're average?
And that's what made him so great. Right there is what made him so great.
Right. Well, and the guy that I was just so you know, Adalius Thomas is the linebacker I was referring to. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
That dude was an absolute monster. I mean, I really don't think he even knew how good he was because
I
Belichick.
remember him.
Yeah, he was. You want to talk about somebody I thought was headed for a heart, and that was just me. You know, I like people to do stuff on a quiet tip, and they don't know what happens. But Adelius Thomas shows up. He shows up that day and shows up late and says there ain't no. And I understood why he was upset. You know, you're not going to make me fit in the system. And then when he publicly said, "Hey, you know, I don't need to learn nothing. There's nothing I learned today. You know, put the toes up in the air. I guess I'll take a fine." No. Guess you won't be playing, and nobody else picked him up because he's playing his best football. That was the thing, you know. And people may have misconstrued that as that maybe he didn't care as a coach. I just think he didn't relent from the standards, and I think that's what else. If we look at Brady, you talk about Brady's yak. I just think you take a 6th-round quarterback out of Michigan whom nobody gave a chance to have any career anywhere near any of this. You know, when I saw him starting that Super Bowl, I said, and it was against the Rams, I said, you know what? The Patriots shouldn't even have showed up today. It's totally insane to where you have a person that's driven for their career and almost everything else they're doing. And like I said, this is a person that they bring in to evaluate who was also some of the best. And not everybody he coached, but he also was coaching, but he also knew who he wanted from other teams. So some people came from over there, and some of those running backs that he got, they weren't Hall of Fame running backs, but they did what they were supposed to do, and they had the big game. And was he coaching when Curtis Martin played for him? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
I'm pretty sure he was, but
yeah. But there's an example. There's a guy that was playing for the Jets, and he comes over there, you know. Or do I have it backwards? Oh, God, sorry.
But I think you made a good point about him cutting people because we did kind of look at him with a critical eye when that started because we had never seen that before. And I remember him cutting Lawyer Malloy.
Oh, yes.
Going over to Buffalo and what a big deal that was. And I'm thinking, I can't believe he cut him. But now we see the method to the madness all these years later. We understand, like, look, we don't have time for this. This is the framework in which we are working. You're not fitting into it. Best of luck to you, and still kept winning. So we understood after the fact. G, you mentioned something about his final years just briefly in your last time up here. How it didn't work too well at the end for him, like he didn't go out on the greatest terms. None of these great coaches do. We think about Landry, we think about Noel. I mean, it was just bad at the end. You know, Shula. You know, I remember I hated Miami when I was a kid, and I almost felt so bad for Shula that I wanted to cry the way he went out afterwards. But,
Well, you know, here's the thing, and I said this before, and y'all probably heard me say it, is that people love a winner. So in his last years, you know, he just did not have that team around him. He didn't have the players that was going to get them to Super Bowls, for example. And I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, once you're in that type of situation, there's a domino psychological effect, I think, with a lot of players. And then they just start looking at the coach. And so I don't know. I was thinking back to, okay, well, what happened at the general manager level and what happened with Kraft that the approach that they had taken seemed to change post Brady. And I also could be hallucinating, so y'all could tell me if I'm way off base. It just seemed like something was different, and it was, as much as I don't like New England Patriots as a fan, I felt kind of bad for them.
Right.
Gee, you lead me to a question. Did Belichick ever get the love? Did he ever get it from the players? We know he didn't get it from the media because the way he came off, he was an ornery old guy, didn't want to talk. Certainly at the end, it didn't seem like he got it from Kraft. I wonder, did he ever get it from Kraft? So when we think about that in where we are now with him not being elected to the Hall of Fame, did he ever get the love? I mean, those of us on here, we weren't Patriot fans. We didn't care for New England. Probably nobody liked Belichick that wasn't a New England fan, you would imagine. did he ever truly get the love during all those years of greatness? And has it manifested itself to this point now where, well, I mean, what's the big deal? We kind of really didn't like him anyway. So what if he won and he, he's the leader and this and that? Do you think that that's a variable? Because I never really thought about it until something that you just said sparked that, G.
Well, I just did a quick Google search because it's an interesting question, and basically what I'm seeing is mixed. A lot of there are players who loved him as a coach and his mind and whatnot, but they did not like his personality and how strict he was and how standoffish he can be. So impersonal, I should say. So it's probably mixed. Kraft, I don't know. I mean, you would see pictures of them talking and giggling it up sometimes, or you see them on video, laughing, giggling up. So there had to be some level of like or at least respect enough to chop it up. So I just think it's mixed based on just a quick search.
Interesting. What about you, big dude? What do you think about that?
I think that the older what I seem to understand from what I saw, and that's what was different about Darius Thomas. When he left, this is a guy that left who was like 29 years old, so he was in the prime of his career. Mostly, if you were able to, and he was with Baltimore first, but so those people that stayed with the Patriots, I think the love came. When you start talking about people like Teddy Bruschi and Vrabel, I don't know if they were friends, but I think they learned to think like him and adopt some of his ways. I think that's how the love was shown more than him saying that Vrabel is more like his son than anybody else. He doesn't seem like anybody that would claim anybody as his son and all that other kind of stuff. But other people, I guess the way they would emulate him as a man is excellence and how to get things done and how to outthink people and how to take small parts. I mean, even when I look at Vrabel's Patriot team this year going to the Super Bowl, I don't know about either of y'all, but I didn't see that team going to the Super Bowl. I knew they'd be better. I knew they might touch the surface or something, but I can almost see a little bit of Vrabel in there. Vrabel's a pretty bright guy, but Belichick got to the part where he did it, and you said he did 48 seasons. Well, some people are bright, some people are polished. But then when you start talking about 48 years of football, 49 years of football, you become brilliant and you in your own ways. And you don't you understand what your own ways are, but you get other people to believe it in other ways. You don't have to sell it. People are coming there and they're all saying, hey, I want one of those big, big shiny rings. I think they're the first ones that came with those real big rings. And he made it worth it, but I don't know that he wore too many of them because he always had to get ready for the next one. So I think his players showed the love by emulating him more so than, hey, man, let's go fishing or let's go do something. Or not too many people say that, if it wasn't for Bill Belichick, outside of football. I hear it in football, but I've never heard it outside of football. So I would say in football, because of football, got the love. Something personal and the better man they came, I'm not so sure that he got the love in those regards.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the two Bills 30 for 30 that was done some years ago. I don't know if either of you were able to see that, but it was about Bill Parcells and the relationship between Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick. And they started, of course, with those early New York Giants years. And it's interesting to me, if you look at that, Belichick was a much younger cat, but he did not change a lot. If I compare his personality to how it was depicted in the documentary versus how he is now, he actually might be a little bit more lighthearted now, but having the young companion may be part of that. I feel like he was a straight shooter, right? And we all have those people in our lives that are those straight shooters that they're not going to candy coat stuff. And because of that, sometimes it might hurt your feelings, but I'd rather have the truth. I'd rather be hurt and have the truth than for you to dance around me and give me some falsehoods. There was a moment in there where LT was kind of, who is this guy? Complaining about me being late and not showing up. But Bill, he never backed down from it. And LT in later years, and I think there was a clip of him in that documentary saying that he understood it afterwards and that this guy was a genius. He was a genius early on. And those personality types don't tend to be warm and fuzzy. They don't tend to get the personal love as
right.
You made the distinction between the personal and, within the parameters of the game type of love. So I just wanted to bring that point up, and that makes me, in thinking about that, like him and appreciate him even more. Like, he was who he was, that he didn't move off of that. And I think he went out on his own terms. He didn't care whether you were LT or you were Lawyer Malloy or Deion Branch.
Yeah.
You are who you are. Even conversations with Tom Brady, they've been showing this clip about Tom going to the sidelines, and he's like, what happened on that? And Tom's like, what do you mean? I hit him. And he's like, oh, you mean the other one? Like, Bill didn't back down because it was Tom Brady. If you missed the play, you missed the play. And I think that to me speaks even more to how great he was.
Well, apparently he and Bob Kraft got along to maybe the later years because, Bill Belichick was wanting more control. And, Kraft doesn't seem to be going from that from what I can recall. So I definitely, and I know Kraft has come out recently about the snub with the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think there's love from the ownership. I do believe the Kraft family really appreciated him. But like you said, Steph, interpersonally, like when you got away from the field, from the from the organization, would they? Well, somebody gave him love. He has kids. So.
Right.
Well, and what's interesting too about this, and then I'll leave any final comments you all might have on this. The Pro Football Hall of Fame selection committee is mostly media members.
Right.
So there's what primary media members from each NFL city. Right. And if you think about the relationship that he had, and there's others on that committee, but I want to harp on the media representation. And if you think about the contentious relationship that he had with the media, maybe that really played a role. And they might not want to admit it, publicly, but I'm almost wondering if that didn't play a part in it. And if it did, that's really petty. Like I said, it doesn't matter how you feel about this guy. It's about what he accomplished. That's what Hall of Fame is supposed to be about. Whether you like him, dislike him, love him, it shouldn't matter. But, as we know, there have been other incidents where that seems to have been the case, where how people felt about candidates reared its ugly head. So I just wanted to throw that part out there, because that might not be something that a lot of people know when they think about, well, who was voting and why did he not get selected? Well, if majority of them were media members, that could have had something to do with it.
It's really interesting because it's one media person per city with an NFL team, with New York and LA receiving 2.
Having 2, yep.
Then you have 17 at-large members, and so that can be media or some like NFL insiders. I wouldn't be. There's a list, so I didn't go and look at the list to see who those 17 were, but I suspect it's probably still more media than insiders.
It is.
And one from the NFL Pro Hall of Fame writers, huh?
I believe, and I could be incorrect on this, but I believe it's only Tony Dungy and Bill Polian.
Wow.
Which also adds a variable, with both of them being Indianapolis Colts, affiliated with the Indianapolis Colts, and Polian at one time the GM of the Bills. Again, there's that New England connection. And then, as G was saying at the end, the Pro Football Writers of America. It's very media dominated.
Mm-hmm. Now, did the media come up with the idea of the NFL Pro Hall of Fame, or did that come internally from the NFL?
That question's way above my pay grade, G.
Yeah, man. I'd be lying if I told you I knew. But the media, if you think of it, has driven a lot of other things, all the way back to when the NFL was all kind of different organizations, all the way back to the 1918 Walter Camp team, with Paul Robeson and all of them. No, the media picked all those people too. I remember, G, all the way back. Paul Robeson was all these different people in 1918, and Walter Camp is the one that said, "Hey, he covered the game." And I think people got people to cover the game. That was the great part about being a media person, is that you had some power and authority, which is why my last thing is, Guru, I really think there's got to be some more balance. I think there needs to be maybe recent Hall of Fame people that just got selected, and maybe a senior member or two that's involved with that selection committee. Not to take away from anything, maybe you add to it. The media has way too much, and always has, over all those years. When you start talking about harbingers of why things happen, way too much control. Now, if you have all these other folks, they were told, I'm sure, I can't remember the gentleman's name that comes to your house for the Hall of Fame, and he tells you, but it's got to be a little bit more than somebody's waiting and you want to get somebody in, and all. Because I think what's going to end up happening here is, and I think when Brady is going to be out of the game long enough, I'm going to say this. I think because a lot of people, even though they think Brady's the GOAT, they may think he's the GOAT, but they can't stand him. How many votes does Belichick lose because people couldn't stand Brady?
Well, just looking here, G, the question you posed, not real clear cut, but it looks like it started in Canton by the Canton Bulldogs, who are the early NFL powerhouse. And they kind of did a newspaper campaign, and the residents just raised money to establish the site. So I don't really see anything.
Well, the NFL pretty much gave them the land, or bought the land and gave it to them.
So, anything else to add to this, G, before we move
on? No. But I thought it was important to kind of know how it got started. For me, that has some meaning.
Yeah, it just seemed like it was almost like, hey, let's do this Hall of Fame thing, and let's see if we can raise money for it. And it looks like the residents of Canton put together almost $500,000, and they started it. I think maybe more modern, the modern day version of it might provide us a little bit more insight, like how do we get to where it is now? But was that
in the 20s?
Yeah, I think 1920.
Yeah, the Canton Bulldogs were around that time.
Okay, so it was already there, but it was probably more of a local thing before the NFL got involved. So I'm saying the NFL gets involved in 63.
Yeah, it looks like it was mostly a Canton Bulldogs situation up until, like I said, more of the modern era.